Okay, guys, as we are coming to the end of the introduction to fly fishing, you know, we needed to cover this at some point, so I'm going to cover it now after we've learned the parts that we need. What were the other ones? Casting and retrieving and catching fish. Now, the main part of catching fish is knowing what type of fly you need. And there's many different types of flies, and I'm going to simplify it down to, let's say, 4 different types of flies. Easy as that. There's just 4 different types, and they all do basically the same thing if they're in the same type of fly. So, first off, we're going to cover poppers. Now, these are just like your regular topwaters you do with bait casting, little poppers. They sit on top of the water, and you jerk them, and they push bubbles down. That's all they do. And they work great for panfish and crappies and anything that likes to feed on topwater bugs and insects like water striders and other things like that. So now the next category would be wet flies. These cover like your mayflies, your woolly buggers, your nymphs, and your just other little scuds and stuff. Little aquatic macroinvertebrates, basically. So like your mayflies, your dragonflies, your stoneflies, all those different things that you can find by scooping out and seining a pond and looking at things under the microscope. Well, not necessarily a microscope. You can see them without the microscope, but if you have a microscope, you can really see the details. And that's what these flies are all trying to mimic, is things that fish see normally every day, and you want to make it look as realistic as possible. So, yeah, you have your wet flies, and now we're going to go into dry flies. Dry flies are like wet flies, but they float on the top of the water and they don't sink. Well, they will sink if you get them wet enough. So, like, here's a dry fly. Generally, they got like little things on the top that like look like wings, and they're very shiny on the bottom with like little legs, and they're meant to look like a bug floating down the water on the river, just kind of floating, moseying its way down. That goes for trout especially, because dry flies are excellent for catching trout, especially in like a day like today when it's raining. So like there's gonna be invertebrates hatching, and it's going to just be a heck of a lot more fun to use a dry fly because you see them come up and they take it. But anywhere else, really, if there's no current or anything, you toss it out and you just kind of slowly retrieve it in, putting little wakes in the water. So dry flies are an excellent thing to use when you're trying to catch spawning sunfish and bluegill and crappies and all those other things. Now, another dry fly that we have that I really don't have a category for is like, here's a mouse, topwater mouse. I really don't have it in any specific category. I just use it when I'm fishing for bass and other things like that, and it seems to work really great. I caught a lot of rock bass on it in Minnesota. And another type of dry fly you can have is like one that's got a foam body, so you don't have to worry about it getting too wet and sinking. So the foam keeps it on the top. So those are great for fishing on rivers. And this one looks kind of like a grasshopper or a cricket or something. I had one that really looked like one, and it worked awesome for sunfish. So that's something to keep in mind. And you want to match what the fish in the area are going to be seeing normally. So like right now, this time of year, they're going to be seeing, like little scuds and nymphs because it's the springtime. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. You want to match what they're going to be seeing for the time of year. Lastly, the last category that I have is streamer flies. These are meant to look like a fish, a little bait fish, and they're really meant to look like an injured bait fish swimming in the river or in the lake or what have you, whatever you're fishing. So these are some of my favorite flies to tie just because they're so easy and I lose them so often. I like to have a surplus of these. So there's many different types. You can have these kind where there's just hair. Stick myself with a hook. And then there's also this one here. I put a little piece of rabbit fur on there. When you're fishing these, you want to watch out and make sure that the rabbit fur doesn't like go on the inside of the hook. That's called getting a fouled hook because it's going to screw up the way it looks in the water. So you want to make sure it's all in line and the way it's supposed to be. So those work excellently for bass and basically any fish. You can use these for any type of fish. I've caught bass on these. I've caught bass on these. Haven't caught anything on these yet. Seeing as how I probably because I just got them and I haven't used them. But these wet flies work great down here. These stone flies, these are stone flies. They came in my uncle got me these for Christmas. It was in a little life cycle set from Bass Pro. So I gave those a try and they're working great. But these little ones, these little guys right here, this is a midge. And midges are like little tiny larvae. So these work great for catching you some bait fish, for catfish and other things like that. And you know, you just, when you see them in the shallows, you just plop it in there, kind of jiggle it right in front of them. You'll catch them all day long. My favorite thing to use is this. Here, I'll just grab the bigger version of it. It's the same size as that, but different. So what we got here is, it's a water beetle. So it's got chenille and then a foam top, and it looks like a beetle to them. So what all your fly is doing is mimicking what the fish see on a regular basis and what they normally eat. And basically, you just kind of talk to people, see what they're biting on, and if you know your area specifically well and you've fished it for multiple years, you generally get to know what to use when and what time of year. So basically this time of year and most of the season, I like using these woolly buggers, and I like throwing this bumblebee to kind of in the summertime. You know, any sort of feathery fly with feathers and kind of a body and some ribbon on it, that works great for summertime. Anything with like some red on it works great. So you just kind of talk to people, get to know what they fish like bite on, and you're golden, you're solid, and you're on your way to catching fish. So like I said, flies are generally pretty easy once you understand the time of year, what the fish like to eat, and what the fish see on a regular basis during the time of year. So that's all I got for you guys. So hope you stay tuned for the next video I post, whether it be a fly tying video or another fly fishing segment or just me catching fish. And yeah, so hopefully I'm going to do one last video for this fly fishing segment, and it's going to be the knots that you need to know, because there's specific knots that you need to know how to use for different parts of your fly line with your leader and tippet. So I will cover those in the next video, so stay tuned.